But we begin in Washington, where just minutes ago, U.S. President Joe Biden gave his first reaction to a controversial Supreme Court ruling. Their historic 6-3 ruling gives former presidents absolute immunity from prosecution for their official acts. Biden says the decision sets a dangerous precedent for the power of the Oval Office.
This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation.
For more, we're joined now by journalist Ira Spitzer in San Francisco. So, Ira, you were listening in to Biden's speech. What stood out to you?
Well, President Biden, as we just heard there, saying in no uncertain terms that he disagrees with the Supreme Court decision, which came down earlier today, giving President Trump near total immunity, at least for his official acts carried out as president. And Biden really, of course, I would say, seeking to change the narrative. We've seen so much of the narrative over the past few days focusing on his disastrous debate performance last week. So the president coming out very strong there, very composed, and saying that this is now going to be something that he wants to give the American public, American voters, something to think about with regards to this upcoming choice, which is likely to be between President Biden and Donald Trump, and saying that some of the danger that Trump poses to the country, in Biden's view, that this has now been enhanced by this Supreme Court, which you'll remember Trump himself appointed 3 of those justices. So again, another big, huge item to go on this on the presidential campaign trail, as well as, of course, a monumental decision on its own from the U.S. Supreme Court earlier.
And Ira, what kind of reaction have we heard from Donald Trump today?
Well, as you might imagine, Donald Trump having basically the opposite reaction as Joe Biden. Trump calling it a big win for democracy. He, of course, has been railing against the criminal charges against him, which he will face. Well, he still faces 3 potential cases. And of course, he was already convicted in New York State. So Trump has been railing against some of these cases against him, or all of these cases against him. So certainly a big win for the former president to have this sort of support for the Supreme Court, which really undermines the potential to try him for his alleged attempts to subvert the 2020 election. So this is surely going to be another major issue going forward for this very heated and intense presidential campaign, which, as we've seen, has really taken to new heights and new levels over the past week with that debate, and then now with the Supreme Court ruling.
All right, Ira, that is journalist Ira Spitzer joining us from San Francisco. Our thanks to you. Well, let's bring in Jim Robenalt. He is a presidential historian and lawyer. We've reached him tonight in Cleveland, Ohio, for reaction. So, Jim, thanks for being here. You know, we just saw the current U.S. president use this decision to really highlight and underscore the stark difference between his leadership style and that of President Trump, and saying this would only further embolden President Trump if he gets back into the Oval Office. What stood out from you from the president's brief remarks just now?
Well, I mean, his final note, I dissent, along with Justice Sotomayor. It's a very strong quick response to this very dangerous Supreme Court precedent. And I think with him coming out and suggesting that this is well beyond anything we've ever seen, it underscores one thing, and that is Trump needs to be defeated. Because if he gets power with a Supreme Court that allows presidents to do whatever they want with absolute immunity, it becomes exceptionally dangerous, especially when one of the cornerstones of Trump's campaign is that he wants to get retribution against political enemies. So Biden's response was very strong, very direct, very quick, and I think very accurate. This is a dangerous precedent.
Well, you know, the liberal justices have all come out with the written dissent. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote something, and I'll just read this to the audience. Hypothetical president who admits to having ordered the assassinations of his political rivals or critics, or one who instigates an unsuccessful coup or has a fair shot of getting immunity. Those are all possibilities. They would be immune. Now, that's a hypothetical situation, but we saw, President Biden just now really try to change the channel from his debate performance to talking about, what could possibly happen with another Trump presidency. Do you think this will be enough to change the channel?
No, but I do think that we face a twin crisis in the United States right now. 5 days ago, something went haywire with Joe Biden in that debate, and nobody has explained it. Some have said maybe it was cold medicine. If that's the case, I want a doctor to tell me that. Should he have some sort of neurological exam to see if he had a neurological event? Because the next morning he was a different person and more like the person we had always seen. So until he answers the question of what happened that night, this issue of whether or not this is just an aging process problem that's only going to get worse is going to dog him. And so we have that crisis 5 days ago, and then today we have the Supreme Court essentially giving Trump a large pass on being prosecuted for the January 6th insurrection. He will still face charges, but it's a very broad grant of immunity to Trump for doing things in what are called his official capacity as opposed to his unofficial capacity.
This is the first time in U.S. history that the court decided a president is shielded from some criminal acts. Beyond Biden and Trump, how do you see this ruling affecting U.S. democracy going forward?
Well, I think, we have separation of powers. We have an executive, a legislative, and judicial branch, and they can't get into each other's business, so to speak. They are independent. There is a separation of powers, but they also work together and in tandem. The Congress has the right to impeach the president. The judiciary has the right to scale back legislation that is beyond constitutional bounds, and they still have to work together. In this instance, the Supreme Court gave much more leeway to the executive branch to do things that could be fundamentally illegal, but still the president would be immune from criminal prosecution. So that undoes, to me, this delicate balance of the separation of powers as opposed to enforcing it.
We're going to have lots more discussions about this in the coming days, but we have to leave it there for now. Jim, appreciate your time tonight. That is Jim Robenalt, who is a presidential historian and lawyer.